Hello everyone, I'm just finishing up a couple little details so that you can gather in the next minute or two. I don't have fancy music yet to put on for you, but I hope that you're able to see this, and I'm just going to pick up my paints now and we'll start creating together. So how about that? Here we are at Paint with Patty, Creative Spa Online, Bliss Break, whatever you like to call it. That's what I'm trying to give to you. And I'm still working out the rinky-dink realities of technology here, trying to get a little bit more sophisticated so you'll have a better opportunity to see how it is I create. So let me just continue to grab a couple things and then we'll jump right in. Okay, so we're going to spend an hour creating together. Some of you will just be having a cup of tea while we're doing this. Good evening, Cody, and thanks for just jumping right in, letting me know you're online. Sometimes I see you come online, and good evening to Doris, to welcome, whether you're sipping a tea or you're painting along with me. I'm going to just put this painting up here because as I take this next couple minutes, because this is one of the ones I had sent out, and you can see that there's a couple of people in here. It's quite abstract. We're going to play with that and walk through that together, how I ended up doing this piece as I just get my paints organized here. Please do feel free to ask me questions and I'll try to answer them as I go. Also, enjoy chatting with each other. Do you know how you go on someone's Facebook feed, and people will say, they'll start having personal conversations? That would be fine on this feed because we're just hanging out and visiting together without the only thing I'm trying to do is give us a safe place to land where we can enjoy an hour together creating, and from there we'll see what develops. This is intended to be free for you to enjoy. If you want to make a donation in support of what I'm doing here and trying to keep things low or no cost, again, you're welcome to do so. There's a link provided in the bio area. Please do not feel any obligation to do that. I would rather have you here connecting and participating than have you feeling that you have to pay for something in order to be able to enjoy creativity during this season of our lives. All right, so I'm just going to take my palette. I'm reusing one. And yes, oh, that's awesome, Murray. I hope you're creating too. That'd be fantastic. Oh, I'm getting a message. Let's see. It is on my personal page right now. Some folks are still having a challenge. I know there's a message going out via email right now, probably for email subscribers with the link to it. But I will just send my page link to a couple of people who are online here wondering how it is they're going to find me. So let me just do that. There we go. Okay, so I apologize for the slight delay. Oh, Chantal, good to see you. Fantastic. Okay, so here's an example. Now, I could show you a dozen different examples. Well, not a dozen because I don't have a dozen in my studio. This is one of the first kind of steps we'll take. I've indicated to you that you could use pastels or paint, and this is one that's created with pastels, about to step 3 or 4. So we'll try a couple of different ones. We'll just give people another minute or two because this really is, last week people were getting their feet wet, if you like, trying to decide whether or not they wanted to jump in and do this, and this week we're actually creating. So people are getting their paints and whatnot assembled, just like me. You'll hear me rustling through my tubes as I pull out a color intuitively, because I really want to do it as authentically as I can with you. I'm just going to grab my pastels. I say that, I'm going to grab my pastels, but it appears I have loaned them out. So we'll use a little bit more limited palette. And Cody, you're saying sound is good. Okay. All right, Beth, can you hear me now? I do actually have, if I were using my computer, I have a great Yeti mic, but as of right now, I'm trying to give you 2 angles, but I can't yet, so that's what I'm working on. Now I can try and project a little bit more. It just won't be as calm an approach, but you're going to see what I'm doing, even though you may struggle a bit with the volume, and I'll try and move a little bit closer for you. Okay, so let's get started. Now, tonight I brought a tape measure with me. So just so I can show you how I would do this naturally. You can also do it with proper measurements and whatnot, or you can do it intuitively or with your visual eye. I've showed you this because, yes, I buy really expensive canvases generally, more like this. I believe this one, I may have stretched that one myself, but the reason I'm starting on this piece tonight, it's still really quiet. Hey, April? That's unfortunate. I'm not sure how to make it any louder. Let me see if I can. I'm usually not known for being quiet. And does that help at all? It's still very quiet. Well, this is my gentle side. I'm wondering if I can, I don't know, maybe wow, I could do vocals on a different track, but I'm not sure that would help us tonight. So if you still can't hear the instructions, I'll speak up, okay? A little bit. April, maybe just let me know what the sound is like still at your end. Okay, crank up the volume, folks. So rule of thirds. You can measure this. I'll talk a little louder tonight just for the sake of you hearing. Normally I'll speak quietly so that we can just rest and relax. And I'm sipping decaf coffee tonight and water. You might have a cup of tea with you. This is a 9x12 canvas, which means if I divide it into 3 sections, you know, when I teach in schools, I'll say to kids, it's all about the math. Okay, still quiet. Can you make out what I'm saying, April, though? I really have spent a couple days trying to figure out OBS so I could change Open Studio, so I could change how you hear me. But at the moment, for this week, it might be a little tougher still. And next week, I hope to have it all straightened out for you. So if I was using my measuring tape, I would measure. This is a 12-inch canvas. I'm using a tiny one just because you can access these at the, thanks, Michelle. You can access these at your dollar store, right? So I'm trying to make this as accessible as we can, because beauty is not always about the materials, right? You can pick up a twig and whittle away and make something extraordinarily beautiful. In this case, if I went to a dollar store, I could still get a canvas to paint on, even though, sure, I'd love to have one that cost $10 or $12, but if I have one that costs $2, then then maybe that's just good enough for right now. Right, so I'm going to divide my canvas into 3. Now I'm using a piece of charcoal. This is vine charcoal, which means I'll lean a little closer when I'm talking to you about these tips, and maybe that will help you hear a little bit better. Vine charcoal. Okay, great, Chantel. I'm not sure what the challenge is, but I know I have a really quiet computer too. So vine charcoal is literally, you can see it bends. You can see it bend as a twig. It's a twig that's been burned, and you need to buy charcoal that is real as opposed to synthetic charcoal. The reason why you want to own the reason you want to purchase real charcoal is because it comes off very easily. And those of you who have seen my horse, I've been posting in the 7-day art challenge, and last night I posted a horse, and that horse was drawn with a piece of charcoal and kneadable eraser. Right, so this is a kneadable eraser, and if you pick up one of these over, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, starts to look like this. It becomes part of your personal possessions because it's not exactly what you would share, because it's got all your bacteria in it for years. Okay, so this kneadable eraser, just to show you, just takes that charcoal almost right off the canvas. It leaves a very faint line. If you don't have a kneadable eraser, once you make a line, then you can use a water rag, or you can just paint over it. I'm also going to show you, sorry, I keep dropping things off the ledges here. It's a very tight space to try to get you this close to the camera, or this close to the canvas when it's so tiny. I could also use a piece of chalk pastel. So in this case, again, I'll draw my thirds this way. I'm eyeballing this. You don't even have to make a line. You can get close enough. You'll hear me say close enough for jazz, because you're going to do some inventive and creative chords. Now, you can barely see those lines, right? And that's how you want it. It's just a guide for you, because I know that if I do anything here, 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 or here on my canvas, that's going to create a strong composition. All right? So these are basic, and many of you online here, you know this. But of course, the beauty of this Wednesday night creative spa is to create together and connect, as opposed to being a private lesson or a lesson in a gallery where you may all be at the same level. Okay, so we have, the other thing I wanted you to note is that if you want, you can use a colored background already, right? If you have something prepared in color, or we can paint the background on, which is what I'm going to do tonight, is I'm going to paint a background on to get started. If you have a hair dryer, you might need it to get your background dry before you start painting on it. But as you can see from this piece, it was just white. And when I put the colors on top of it, it's still just white behind those trees. And I have to go in then with using negative space really and carve in all of the colors. So to make it a little bit easier tonight, I thought we'll draw a horizon line, and we'll draw, you can either enter your forest here, or you can enter your forest here, or up here, or here. You can have a pathway in here. So again, you can take your charcoal, or you can take, I'll make these lines a little bit darker so you can see what I'm talking about. Just for the sake of demonstration, you're working here. Those areas, you can paint intuitively and do whatever you like. But truly, if you want to have a stronger composition, then I'm going to bring, you know what, I'm thinking I'll bring, I think I'll have a pathway that just winds in this way. Maybe a little bit like this. Okay, so I know I have a pathway. I know I'm going to have a couple of figures here in my forest, so you might want to draw a couple sticks. Yes, truly, you're just drawing a couple of stick figures. I know. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? But that's it. Put a couple of vertical logs in, and then I'm going to lighten that up with my kneadable eraser now that you have seen it, or you can take a screenshot of it. Again, talk to each other online. Feel free to have a conversation with someone else. I see Michelle Swanson from out west. I see some of you who I know may not be painting, but maybe your spouses. You've been friends and supporters, kind people in my life over the years. I love this phrase. My family, we went through a lot of deaths in our family several years ago, and had a lot of people that surrounded our life with kindness, overwhelming kindness. And it was kind of funny. My daughter said to me the other day, you know how, Mom, it takes a whole village to raise a child. For us, it didn't take a village. It took a whole metropolitan area. So part of community building here is that we connect with each other and build relationships. Yes, even digital ones. I joined Clubhouse, a new beta program for connecting verbally and without pictures, just conversations around different topics. If you get an invitation, please do join that, because I may go on there and do some things around the arts, or if you PM me, I'll invite you by email, so that when I go online to talk about visual voice and developing your visual voice, what does that mean? What does it mean in your home to have a visual voice? Then you can join in on those discussions. All right, for those of you who are with us last week, manganese blue is not a standard in my palette if I was portrait painting per se, but I do really enjoy it for, we've had some crazy skies, so start to lay out, or if you've got pastels out, even if you have pastels, you could put them in with water and chalk pastel and just smear them around to make color, or you can go, you can use paint at this point in time. I want to get some nice bright skies. What I'm going to do is, because I'll have a little bit of an opening here in the trees, I know I'm going to put my light source, okay, so this is something you might want to decide. You can even draw it in. I'm going to say, I'm going to say the light source is fading down over here, which means it's going to head in this direction, across the trees this way. It will cast some light up this way as well as it recedes and drops down, but it will be about there. So again, strong cross point. People are in a cross point, and then we'll build from there. But just so you know. Oh, I didn't realize that Clubhouse was not available on Android. Yes, I suppose that is true. I was an Android lover, and now see how fun this is. I mean, I know I'm fielding all the conversation at the moment, but you can talk with each other, right? You can hit reply and touch base. And again, always be respectful, kind. I say that because we just have to, because you know what? Bottom line is, I love you all dearly. That's why I'm doing this. I believe we can go somewhere together, that we can't go alone. And we need my ability to connect with you this way, and your willingness to connect this way means that I get to create something different with you than I would if I was sitting in my studio alone tonight. And maybe I wouldn't even have the strength or the desire to create tonight because I'm on my own. But if I'm with you, you inspire me to create. So I put burnt umber down. Now I'm putting raw umber. Yes. Oh, okay, the Android, okay. Yes, I used to be an Android user for the cameras and whatnot. I found them, I really enjoyed them. However, when I traveled, I couldn't communicate with my daughters very well because I was out of the country. And I could communicate on Messenger or iMessage. Oh, that's cool, Chantel. Thank you. That's awesome. One of the realities as we get I'm just assembling paint on my palette, so please do the same. you can put any colors down you want, because what I'm going to encourage you to do is always mix your color before you put it down, so that you're not, and you can buy some funky tube colors every once in a while, save yourself a little bit of trouble, in the sense of some of your mixing, if something catches your eye or your imagination. But the reason I like mixed color is because it's just more authentic. People don't walk up to your canvas. I mean, they can if they're artists. They're going to walk up to your canvas and they're going to say, "Hey, she put ultramarine blue with raw umber, a little burnt umber, and alizarin crimson, and that's how she gets her black." Well, that's true. Those of you who know me well, you know that I don't use black when I paint. Every once in a while, if someone gives me black, I might use it as a background or use it for edges on a canvas. This time I'm using cobalt blue as well. I haven't put ultramarine out yet, but I may. Just because it gives me a really beautiful black. And yes, everything in my studio is large. I use small brushes some, but I use a lot of big house painting brushes, right? Purdy brushes are my favorite, and usually I prefer a sash brush, right? So I'm going to mix this with water. I will show you, and you'll hear me say, I use a lot of Liquitex products. I believe this is background on my iPhone, sorry, backwards on my iPhone. I can switch that around sometimes on my computer screens, but this is just Liquitex gloss, medium, and varnish. Just Liquitex gloss, medium, and varnish. I prefer to use it instead of water. It's just terribly expensive. However, it works well and it keeps the paints relatively thick. I also use a lot of gesso instead of white. I use gesso. So if I want to work with clear color, I'm going to use the gloss, medium, and varnish. If I want to use something like a buttercream, oh, that's great, Chantel, thank you. If I want something like a buttercream texture, like icing sugar, that's really what it's like. It's like icing sugar. Then I use the gesso as opposed to white, and I do have titanium white here as well. It's just that I do really enjoy gesso as my white. I also keep a cloth nearby. This would be just an old t-shirt. The reason being, I want to be able to dab my water off my brushes, and I use and reuse and rinse my rags. So I'm just taking my palette here. It's going to run as I show you. I'm going to pick a color for the sky. Well, right off the bat, because I'm going to put my light source here, I know that I can put a light color there, and I can also put, this is almost literally just rings. You feel a little bit Van Gogh-like. From North Bay, fantastic, Lana, good to see you. Yes, we had a workshop in North Bay, and Lana, that's when Lana and I met. Some of you might know her. And isn't it great that we can all join together? Now I've taken that light color and I'm adding some blue. Now, don't ask me why I'm going in circles. I just felt like I'd like to. You can do a natural horizon line. I thought today I would just paint variations on light and dark and paint the foreground, but here I am, just intuitively creating with you. I'm going to pick up a slightly darker cobalt blue as I get down to this lower area of the canvas. I am using the rule of thirds, and I am painting over top of my stick people to get slightly darker colors here close to the ground. If you're painting along, we'll blend this a little bit lighter as we get to the top of the sky. And you might be using oranges and pinks. I mean, there's just so many variations. All we're doing is giving ourselves a background. And you see, I mean, seriously, I don't know, maybe I should do a lesson on being precious. I am not very precious sometimes with my work, and I really just like to give her and enjoy the moment. if I'm doing a piece like you've seen online in the, the great 7-day challenge, which I might turn into an 8-day challenge because I think I have one more I want to show you, or a couple more I want to show you. You can, I can get very detailed. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually cascading the light across the whole front of the picture there. And for my darks, or for my, not for my darks, but for my foreground, again, another large brush. I don't know, maybe it's cheating a bit to use such large brushes. You can use small ones, or you could use your hand even, right? I'm just going to take and say, okay, I'm going to draw some woodland shapes in here. Just making, last week we were talking about this. For me, the tool is the key. You see, this is not a brick making brush, unless I was painting bricks on a very large house, on a very large canvas. But this is a line brush. It creates beautiful horizontal lines all on its own. I mean, I barely have to be artistic. All I have to do is recognize that this is a shape, and this shape will work for me. I might say, okay, the pathway's a little lighter. At the front here, there may be some, remember I have my pathway roughly in here. There might be some fallen leaves. Oh, these are the leaves falling from the sky. Yep, there's some, there we go. There might even, there's often red and colors and blues, lots of blues in forests. So since we're doing our magical forest, I still want to be able to have my pathway in here. Oh, my pathway is now red. Well, maybe that should be reflected in the sky. Excuse me, so there's some continuity in the shadows and the light and the color. I've not been particularly successful or I really didn't have much of a compelling interest in paint nights per se, because I rarely do anything the same way a second time. Everything is always quite innovative for me, but there's still guiding principles, right? If you have a key card, this is just a rubber tool. I had a key card out. I'm just not sure where I set it right now. But if you think about this as a hotel key card, or a piece of cardboard. Again, it's about everything is shapes. Okay, everything is shapes. It's not a painting. It's a shape. A person's face is a composition of shapes. Any scene we look at, you look outside at a house, it's a combination of rectangles. If I'm looking in a garden, the shapes may be more random. They might be more triangular, rounds and triangles mixed, but it's shapes. The other thing that I really enjoy is water and spray brushes, spray bottles. This is also handy with my rags. Just moving a couple canvases out of the way, the firing line, if you like. So I'm just going to keep my painting moist, a little bit moist. We did say we wanted it to dry. I'm just going to show you an optional technique if you're wanting, if you want to carve some of your tree shapes. What are trees? Trees are vertical lines. I'm wiping my tree shapes, or my tree maker, off on my pant leg as I go here, right? Remember, this is my entryway to my forest. And also recognize, please with me, there are some basic things that demonstrate that you have an understanding of a forest. And really, this is a magical forest. We're not looking at a picture. We're not reproducing anything we've seen before. We're just drawing and creating from our hearts. So you may have put all sorts of different colors down. Yes, this is I'm just literally carving up the canvas with my and trees go all the way to the top. So many forests, if you're looking at a wall of poplars out in Alberta, or you're looking at a wall of cedars here in Ontario, well, they go all the way to the, off the canvas. We're not drawing an apple tree per se. That would be a slightly different technique, similar tools, but slightly different technique. Okay, and again, my pathway is here. So I'm just using my tool to scrub a bit of that pathway off so I can find it again. I've lost my people, so I'll put a couple stick lines back in. Now let's let that set up for a minute. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, maybe I was going in circles just because it's pretty. It also flows nicely, right? There's just a nice flow to it. I'm trying to make, complex subject matter somewhat accessible for all of us, right? So this is where you can grab your colored paints, or you can grab your pastels. The other thing to note is, see this little short end, or if you have sometimes, actually one of my favorite tools is a turkey baster. You can buy a turkey baster sometimes at a dollar store, and it looks like a syringe. But if you cut the metal line, or you have thin paint in it, then you can squirt out lines with your turkey baster. So often I'll go into Home Depot or Canadian Tire. Obviously I'm from Canada. Tractor Supply Company, the TSC store, which is now called the PV Mart, a co-op, any store, really anyone that sells anything anywhere. They have tools that can be redesigned and used in a different way. And that's how creativity works. Now, we know the branches go this way. They also go across. So there's random cross points where branches go. And also, if you're looking at a cedar forest, then tree lines, trees fall. So there'll be the odd straight one, and they don't always fall to the ground and they're not all perfectly straight when they go in. Right? So there we go. That's kind of fun. That sets us up for the next step. You're welcome, Michelle. Well, and when you want to do a super serious painting, for sure, I'm going to take lots of time to do it. No question about it. When I'm creating in joy or sharing a moment on techniques, yes, then I'm going to do it with a little bit more fun. Okay, so what I wanted you to ask yourself now that we've gotten this far is, sometimes as we look at what I would say is more the creative spa part online, or using art to release some grief or joy, I like to ask people questions. So think about a question you might want to ask if you were leading this workshop and I said to you, well, what color is joy? That might be an easier question to answer, because I would say, for me, joy is yellow. You may see joy as a different color. So let me ask you, what color is joy for you? I'm just going to turn myself around here, see if I can grab some bright yellow paint, because for me, joy is bright yellow. And if I was to ask you, what color is melancholie, as the French mime teacher would say to me in my earlier days, melancholie, what color would that be? Well, for me, melancholie would be not black, but it could be a deep ultramarine blue. Chantal, okay, so joy for you is pink. Doris, it's red. Do you see the diversity here? Isn't that beautiful? So let me just say, I'm going to take another one of my paintbrushes. It's called a feather, because feathers, I did not steal this from any living animals, okay? But feathers have great pen nibs, as you can see. They also have wonderful line makers. So if I was Doris right now, I might say, okay, let me see if this will work. We'll see if this will work. I might say that I'm going to put a red tree on my canvas. Oh, that's a little bit wide, isn't it? Let me try it different. Okay, so I can use the tip. So you see, even though I use feathers for a lot of things, now I'm using a feather to draw in red lines. And again, some will go right off the page. Some will go at stop at different points on the page. Red might be a good one for that line going across because it gives beauty. Chantal, I believe it was you who said pink. Pink was your joy color. So if I was drawing pink, I could put a pink line in here, one in here, one in here. So you see how we're building this? I'm just going to wash my paintbrush. You can do this. Melancholy is gray. Okay, so rather than using black and white, for me I'm going to use the tip of my feather brush, otherwise known as a goose feather. I'm going to take some burnt umber. I'm going to take, I don't have ultramarine out, but I have cobalt blue out, so it'll be a little bit lighter. And I have red, but I didn't bring out alizarin crimson yet, which is what I would use to make black. However, what I can create is a relatively strong gray tone. It has a hint of red. So if I want, it's not black, it's like a rich charcoal gray. But sometimes I'll ask people, what are you feeling tonight when you came into the class? How has your week been? My week's been been a bit harder this week than normal for me. Well, in fact, the last couple weeks, maybe the last month. I don't know why. However, one of the things, it's almost like the harder it gets, sometimes the more we reach to just create beauty and work out the challenges of life. If I want, I can add some gesso, which is my white. You can use tiny paintbrushes for this. You could use water or gel mediums with your credit cards or key cards for library cards, expired library cards. So Chantal, I'm going to put my grays in here. It's just a lighter, it's almost like a purple, which I do have a thing about purples. It's really funny in developing your visual voice. This is, you may find this funny. I find it hilarious. Wow, it's already 20 to 7. We better hustle here. I often do not, we'll just stay a little bit after 7 tonight if that's okay with you guys, just because we've had some rough pieces getting started. I'm using blue now as well. See, now all we have is a bunch of vertical lines on a canvas. Oh, one of my favorite colors is definitely Naples yellow. I'm going to need to get one of my application tools, I think, a little different for this. I love Naples yellow, and I love Naples yellow with white. That's buttercream icing for me. And I do have a thing about chocolate cake with buttercream icing. I don't get to eat it as much as I used to when I was a younger soul. Yeah, so often we can take our color, our moment of each day, and we can turn them into something of beauty. Oh, I'm glad you're loving this. That's great. That is my hope. We'll try this. I might need to use a light paintbrush for this, I'm not sure. Normally when I do forests, I do them quite large, or I'm using pastels all the way. What I'll do, just so we can see what it looks like, so I'm going to show you what it looks like if you use, this is a pastel, it's a green pastel. Okay, so perhaps, oh man, I want to see growth this year, right? So now I have paint on here. I'm putting green sticks for growing trees. I really want to see some growth and inspiration in our lives. I really want to see us build community together. And I was on one of the Clubhouse calls I was on today was on economic development. I was saying, well, you know what? I mean, as soon as we found ourselves here on the earth in a challenging situation, and not being able to see one another face to face, then I automatically go singing on my porch or creating like this, doing lives from my studio. Such as it was a very limited studio space. It's improved a little bit over this last year. Okay, so now we have this. I'm going to spray this with my handy dandy water so that it keeps. So this water bottle, any water bottle will work. Just has to be able to spray it. And drip lines, you know, it's like the fall is part of the dance. Okay, drip lines, hair in your work. There's little things that happen. Now we can try a couple of different things. We can try one of my rubber flat brushes. You could try the end of a paintbrush. You could try your hands. Normally what I do when I'm working in large areas, maybe I'll just try it with my baby finger, but I'm working backwards here. So this is using my left hand, which is foreign to me. But if I just start making marks, random marks partway up in the sky, that's normally how I make my trees. That's normally how I crisscross the branches. Right, so you can do that. Oh, I spent some time just singing on my porch because, and my neighbors, I had the best neighbors, you know, they would come out and put their lawn chairs at the bottom of their driveways. Sometimes people would come from another court over. They started gathering around, and it's almost like what we're doing here. So these are just short little, maybe because of the size, we'll just, again, shapes are created. Use a tool that will allow you to create these shapes. So that could be short little brush strokes. All right, now we're getting to the point. And again, you can spend some time. Cool, Michelle, I will invite you again because the economic development discussion was fantastic. And yes, we miss you and your beautiful family. Michelle is my amazing cousin, and she's also in Alberta. She's also a civic leader, political figure, and she's the real deal. So I am blessed beyond measure with the people who are in my life, and add yourself to that list. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we have a lot of colors here. There's not a lot of darks. All right, so I'm going to go in with a paintbrush, and I'm going to say the light source was here. I'm drawing just a couple of my stick figures again, right? One's a little taller than the other one, possibly. Maybe they're two sisters walking side by side. Maybe they're holding each other's hands. They could have a puppy, but we won't. I'm going to just do little blocks for bodies, right? Now recognize the light source is coming this way, so the shadow for these people is going to be in line and in keeping with the light source. And again, doing this, it has to be a little bit realistic. So the flora and fauna is going to break up, and dissipate some of those shadow figures. But now we have an idea. Isn't that fun? Wasn't that just so fun? That's a blast to me, just doing that shadow work. Now let's do some light work, which means first we'll do a few more shadows, and then it is going to be, it's almost 1:45, so being mindful of the time. Over here, on this side of our trees, we're further away from the light source and closer to the ground. So I can start on this side of my trees. Let me see if I can zoom you in a bit closer. Oops, hello. Oh, that wasn't what I was trying to do. I'm trying to turn it around. Well, yeah, my job is to make it look easy. It's not easy. It's how long have you been doing this kind of painting? Oh, that only took you an hour. No, it actually took me a lifetime. But you see, we think sometimes it only takes an hour to do something. It does take a lifetime. It takes that 30,000 hours or whatever it might be. Let me see if I can, there you go. You can see a little bit better maybe now in that close-up. I know this is jumpy video, homegrown. The reality is I'm just trying to encourage you, put courage in you. I want to pack courage in you. I say that's one of my spiritual gifts, one of my motivational gifts. So I know that I have branches here. I'm going up the back side of my trees. Murray, you've done a lot in the woods over the years, so I know you know what a backside of a tree looks like. And probably more than any of us, you could draw and see how these. So I'm just picking out the backside of my trees. I know that the ground is going to be a little bit darker over here because it's further away from the light. See, so this isn't rocket science here. This is just understanding that the sticks are, all these sticks are just they're going to be a little bit, again, on this side, we're also away from the light. Oh, you maybe not be able to see that because I switched sides on you. Yes, I did. There we go. So again, we're just going, I'm using a paintbrush on purpose because some of you may not have all of the other kinds of tools that I might have. All right, now see we can, there we go, sorry. I was just trying to get this smaller again. I'll have to use two hands, forgive me, but with gloves it's a bit, oh, there we are, now we're super tiny. Go a little bit bigger maybe, there we go. Bring you back up a tiny bit. Well, Chantel, that's why I'm trying to show you the brushes and tools I use. I try to show you those up close. So in this case, those darks were just made with a tiny little paintbrush. You can see it's covered in blue and red and these colors, browns. This is my palette. Looks pretty mucky at the moment. Now what I'm going to do, the other thing I want to show you is what happens when we put white in. I'm going to get some more gesso. You might have to watch this a few times, but that's the beauty. I don't take these down. It's up, so you can watch it again and again, and maybe you can, maybe you're able to put it in a larger viewing format, so you can see it a little easier. You can see the details a little bit easier. This side time, because the light source is here, it's going to produce light in front of my people. Right? It's going to have light in between the shadows that they're walking and around them. See, and light in the trees behind them. You see how it's starting to light up now? Now I'm putting the white color on the front side of the trees because I know that there's light all the way up here in between the branches. And it's literally little dab lines, dab, 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 going around the branches. Yes, I leave them up because the whole point of sharing is that, you know, someone can go back and watch it again. You know, if you can't sleep for some reason, we'll go back on and spend some time. You don't always have the community with you always. If you're up, last night was not a good sleeping night for me. We all have times when the days are harder than others. So maybe this would be a happy remembrance for you. Just putting in highlights. We're getting closer to the sun up here. White. I can put quite strong whites. And if you have a hard time seeing, seeing these, you can squint your eyes, because sometimes if you squint, then your painting looks more believable. It takes on a finished quality. Often when I draw and I'm trying to pick out shapes to paint, I have a lot of wrinkles from squinting. Truly, I squint. I just let things blur. It also tells me the tonal values. Now, after I'm finished here with these whites, I may go in and use that buttercream yellow when it's a little bit dry, you know, when things have dried up a bit, because we're painting wet on wet on wet because of our technique tonight, because we have 1 hour. Normally, I would teach this class in 2 hours. You're so clever. You're learning it all in one. But you can go back and look again, right? Okay, now do you see how some of this is happening? Again, the light is going to be on the top of my branches. It's going to be on the top of the branches. Is that not a fun sketch? I mean, come on, this is fun. There'll be some light on this side of the tree, even way back here in these dark bushes. It might be a bit more random. The sky is lighter at the top. I don't understand all the science behind that, but maybe you do, and you're on here in your science space, so you could tell me that. I just like it's lighter, closer to heaven. Some would say, oh, it's lighter because of science. Okay, awesome. Tell us about that, so we can increase our understanding and just be supportive and connected to each other. Sometimes I share more from, the details of my heart and life than we do on this particular piece, because it just does. This actually takes quite a lot of time to paint out this piece. Normally, my forests take 40 hours to make a forest, just because I can do parts of this quickly. If I was doing a large piece, it could be 40, 60 hours creating a forest. Some of them, I've done one painting, which is actually, it's with a beautiful friend of mine in the United States, and it's called Storyland. And I've said to her, okay, the theme of the painting was basically pick a tree and tell me a story. Pick a color, tell me a story. Share with me something about your heart and life based on the colors of the story that are based on the colors of the painting. I'm just trying to bring you in a bit closer here. Not sure that I can. Let me try and drag you in a little closer. There we go. All right, so I'm probably making your screens move, and I hope no one's getting car sick, so to speak, or seasick. Let me just bring you a bit more. See how it's starting to develop? So if you had a hair dryer, you could dry this a little bit now. The last thing that I want to show you, which is important. Some of you wonder about materials and supplies, right? So this is a fan brush. It's a wonderful tool. I'll show you another one that isn't nearly as mutilated as that one. It's a little younger. Thank you, Chantal. It's a little younger. But you see this beautiful hair. Really, if you think about it, it is just a brush, well, maybe similar to this one, and someone flattened it, right? Someone flattened it out. So if you don't have a fan brush, then make one of your brushes into a fan brush. Do you see what I'm saying? So instead of using a fan brush for this next step, I'm going to use this brush, which I'm making into a fan, because then you know that you can do the same. Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water. My decaf coffee is sitting here getting old, but I'm going to have a sip of water while that's setting up a little bit. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to get some ultramarine blue, some alizarin crimson, some raw umber. I'm going to make a few darker colors so that when I highlight, the fallen tree branch, etc., and the branches with the fan brush, you'll be able to see it a bit more distinctly. Now you can just do that, shadows, for me, shadows are blue. Sometimes people do shadows as purples. Well, depends on who your teachers have been over the years. I tend to do shadows as ultramarine blue or cerulean blue, particularly shadows in portraiture. For those of you who are tuning in next week, I may just have to use my computer with a different, with my Yeti mic to be able to pick up volume better. We'll see. And I'll try and see if I can get a camera on my palette so you can see what's being mixed, or on my face once in a while, so you can actually see me talking to you rather than just the voice. However, hopefully you're able to see this way. You're at least able to see what it is we're creating together. And again, we're we're zoomed in right now because I wanted to show you that fan brush technique. So once again, if you take your burnt umber, your ultramarine blue, or I can't say the word properly, it's a very dark blue. It's hard to get apparently right now because of the mineral in it. This is ultramarine blue, and I buy it in big tubs because I use a lot of blue. So I'm taking that wonderful brush and making it into a fan brush myself, just because I'm putting it between my fingers, so I can. And you can do the same if you don't have a fan brush. If you have a fan brush or a feather, this is a good time to use a fan brush or a feather. Okay, so I'm just taking ultramarine blue, umber, and I might not even need my alizarin crimson. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Woohoo! How beautiful is that dark color? And you know what? No black required, because, oh man, if you look outside your windows right now, I rarely look this way when I'm in my studio, but the sun is going down and it's beautiful. Again, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Those of you who are painting along, those of you who are watching, I'm going to just take some of that paint off my brush so that I can make it into a fan brush. Okay, so here I have my beautiful fan brush. Now I know some of the artists online, they do paint nights and whatnot, and they're very good at it. That's not my forte, because I'd have to, as I mentioned earlier, I'd actually have to do something twice. And generally, I'm just not very good at doing something a second time or following an exact formula. I follow guidelines, if you like, just not very good at. Okay, so I never really colored in the lines because I didn't know there were lines. Those of you who also know me well, you'll hear me say things like art has a job to do, which is why it is called art work. So we want to be able to do the work of art, let art do its work in us. And now see that I can tell by the way I'm holding this fan brush that my branches are going the wrong way. Cedars are going to fall, your poplars might be different out west. The trees are different, what can I say? But hopefully those of you who live near mountains, and you can see what I'm trying to do here. If you have a fan brush, it will be easier for you in some ways. Right. We're just putting the tree tops on. And again, after this is dry, you can go back in and you can add some highlights and whites the way I mentioned to you where they would go. Some of you are quilters, seamstresses, rug hookers. You approach color and light differently, or similarly, similar skills in theory, and you apply it differently. You could also do this just with a twig or a branch. So those of you who've joined us recently, I'm just going to stay a couple minutes longer because we had some technical challenges with volume and whatnot earlier. So if you're painting water, just as an example, if you were to paint water, I'm going to switch to my feather now and see how that works. I just experiment with different shapes until I see what will work best for the painting and size I'm working on. If you were, lost my train of thought. Maybe one of you can remind me what I was saying. But yes, this is why you'll see me collecting feathers in the neighborhood. There's Doris's red tree that has fallen across. But it can't be in front of all the trees. It has to be behind some of them. And our people and their shadows. Shadows have varied color too, right? Again, shadows on the back sides of the trees, because you're going to put light on the front side. Your because your light source is here. So, the principle is knowing where your light source is important, in establishing that with the rule of thirds at the front end of your painting. Oh, any questions? Does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to keep adding a little bit of light and dark with my feather here. I know some of you might be painting so intently you don't have time for questions. I'll put the lights on this side of the trees. Light, beautiful light. Woo, baby. Okay, sometimes I get excited when I paint. Yes, I enjoy it just as much as you do. Everything is shapes, so we're just dabbing shapes of light. If you squint, you can see the shapes. You can do this with color too. I'm doing this with light and dark, but you could add, a beautiful Naples yellow, because we had Naples yellow in here as our light source, right? So that light source is going to have light on both sides of the trees, because the light is the light is on both sides of the trees through here. Then it starts to go on this side of, shows on the front side of these cedars, and on this side it's on the front side of these ones. But here it's just illuminating everything in here, right? Woo, there we go. All right, I'm going to spread that back a little bit so hopefully you can see it. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying the process, Rachel. That's beautiful. This is very crude still. I'm still working on. Yes, can you see our people walking in our forest now? What do you think? How are you doing? Okay, now if I was teaching a class, I'd be saying, okay, everybody hold up your paintings so I can see them. All right, so hold them up to the camera. Let me see them. Please feel free to post a photo, tag me in what you're doing, or send it to me by messenger. I'd love to see what it is you're doing. And I wanted to show you any other questions. This is for those of you who weren't with us last week. I still haven't totally finished off our bird nest, but there's a beautiful example of what we did with a key card. Last week, just a simple nest. I need to finish all these paintings I start in classes. And what I've done is I've just taken some old canvases. I've been doing a series of angels as symbolic of frontline workers and the protection around them. And we've lost a lot of frontline workers, but those of you who've served as parish nurses, as long-term care facility folks, I've started preparing these for next week's lesson, because I've been doing a lot of angels. I'll show you another couple. I'm not sure which one we'll work on next week, but this is just abstracted forms. I just draw the shapes of people. It's very simple, but if you have someone in mind who is working on the front lines still, we all know folks like that, right? You may want to create something for them. Maybe you're working on the front lines. Oh, Sharon's so good. I can hardly believe that. That's awesome. Yes, so next week, Sharon knows this. We have a lot of canvases we start, or things my kids have even worked on over the years. This is going to be a whole long army of angels, I call them, and I call these walls of angels. So we did a nest last week. We've done the forest walk this week. And next week we're going to attempt to do some angels. I have a piece on the back wall here that's just gilded at the top. I'm not sure that I will get to show you how to use gold leaf next week, but possibly the week after. Just trying to get a sense of the supernatural realm that surrounds people as they're serving and caring for us. We're all motivated by our deeply held convictions, and sometimes people will say, as artists, you should just paint the landscape. Don't paint it with ethereal meaning to it. People aren't interested. However, for me, the canvas is always an expression of theology more than philosophy. For some of us, it's an expression of philosophy. For some of us, it's science and color theory and math. Well, it's all those things. And for each of us, it's different. We get to hang together and discover it together and give honor and respect to each other while we do that. So thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to just say hi and blessings to all of you. You just made my day. In fact, you're probably going to make my year, because creating with you is really some of the best work I do. Sharing our hearts and giving people a safe place to land, or a soft place to land. Something like the nests we were doing last week. Something that's nurturing, full of life and some grace and peace and hope and joy. So be encouraged. I'll see you next week, 6 to 7 p.m. Paint with Patty, Bliss Break, whatever you want to call it. We're going to Creative Spa online again next Wednesday evening from 6 to 7. I'll try to work out the sound. We're still trying to get more than one camera going here. Blessings and peace to all of you. And I love you all. Here's your final picture one last time. And my heart, love you all. Take care. Blessings and peace to each of you. Good night. And see you next week, I hope. Look for me on Clubhouse. Let me know if you want to be invited into culture discussions and sharing.